Okay, the Oscars have just wrapped up the 90th Annual Academy Awards. Welcome to the Gold Derby Oscars party, after party. I'm going to drink my champagne this time.
Is that the same champagne that's been sitting there for the last 3.5 hours?
No, I rotated it. We got some new glass of champagne, nice and chilled. Tom, tell us what you thought. What's just in the forefront of your mind? I guess we shouldn't bury the lead. The costume designer won the jet ski.
Now we know.
Yeah.
And, it's a shame that Frances McDormand couldn't win the jet ski, but I'm very glad she went on as long as she did.
Yes, I was really hoping Gary Oldman would be winning the jet ski, but unfortunately not.
Me too.
Yeah, but jokes aside, the Shape of Water, the big winner of tonight at the Oscars, taking out Best Picture, Best Director, Best Editing, and Best Score. No,
production design.
No, Duncan. Costume design. No, what? Production design and score. Oh, sorry. The champagne's gone to my head.
Good. This is going to be good.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm already making mistakes. Tom, what are your thoughts with the big night for Shape of Water?
Well, it certainly obliterates the SAG nomination stat that so many of us clung to. And that's probably all for the good. And I'm so thrilled for Guillermo del Toro. He's such an imaginative director. And now the three amigos all have Oscars. And with 4 of the last 5 direct Oscars going to Mexicans. It's an amazing stat, and really one that we're all the better for because their films have been incredible.
Yeah. Riley, what are your big thoughts? Shape of Water with the big haul tonight.
Yeah, so first of all, my bad, and also, apologies from a lot of Gold Derby that predicted 3 billboards in the end. One thing that does hold up, though, is the Best Director stat, so we can continue to look at that one. And even the SAG stat, I feel like, is not totally broken since The Shape of Water got 3 acting nominations, so we can kind of count that as a fluke since there was clear support from the actors branch.
Tony?
I just think it's really kind of awesome that for the first time in how many years that the director and picture match up, actually. I think we had gotten slightly used to the fact that director and picture would split. But and just amazing the fact that going into Best Picture, you still really had no idea who could win. After Jordan Peele won Screenplay for Get Out, you started to really wonder, could that happen? Could Shape of Water win? Could 3 Billboards still win? And to have that kind of suspense going into Best Picture was oddly kind of refreshing. Not sure it helped our blood pressure at Gold Derby, but I do think that it certainly made for, when was the last time we were truly in suspense over Best Picture?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think the year that you had 12 Years a Slave versus Gravity, you could make a case for, there had not been a film that had won as many Oscars as Gravity without going on to win Best Picture since Cabaret. So I think we've had a few nail biters, but I think this one was probably more up in the air than even that year, where pretty much everyone was predicting 12 Years a Slave to win.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what I don't get, because it is an upset. Most of the experts at Gold Derby were predicting 3 Billboards to win. The editors were a bit more split. I'm not sure if a few of them broke 3 Billboards in the last day or two, but it was more 50-50 amongst the editorial team at Gold Derby. But Shape of Water, it had the most nominations. We all said it was going to win Best Director. It's sort of baffling to me why that wasn't the front runner going into tonight anyway.
I think the combination of the SAG ensemble win and that strong showing at the BAFTAs really gave 3 Billboards a lot of momentum to get over the backlash that was largely online, although certainly published in the New York Times, that we talked about a lot, but I wasn't quite convinced that it would reach to the voters. So I went with 3 Billboards too.
Yeah, Matt, I agree. I mean, I went with 3 Billboards, but I'm surprised that so many other people did.
Yeah, it wasn't a horrible prediction by any means, but I was surprised that was the front runner going into tonight. Tony, who do you think had the best speech tonight?
Up until Best Actor, you know what was interesting to me is that I sort of felt like I was going through most of the ceremony thinking that a lot of the acceptance speeches were kind of blah. Nothing really stood out to me until Guillermo del Toro gave a really just beautiful, emotional speech, which would have been my speech of the night. But then Frances McDormand got up there, and anytime Frances McDormand gets on stage, it needs to be like her Rodney Dangerfield, I don't get no respect, of her just going up and saying, I've got some things to say. As soon as she said that, I was like, oh yes, here we go. And what was interesting is that not only was it, a great speech, but we saw some emotion from her that we hadn't seen in previous speeches, particularly when she's talking about, her family. And then just that moment of getting the female nominees to stand up. That just one little gesture, I think, was so powerful. And I now want to watch her win awards. I know she's won her fair share this year, and I'm sure she wants a break. But she just knocks everything out of the park as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I think that could be the moment, or that could be one of the great moments from any Oscar speech, from any ceremony, getting every female in the audience who was nominated to stand up. Huge. And the way the audience responded to that was incredible. Riley, did you have a favorite speech?
I thought Jordan Peele's was very well composed, and something great about Frances McDormand's speech was that it put Gary Oldman's to shame, which just went on and wasn't really about much that was interesting.
Yeah. Tom?
I like the speeches from folks who weren't expected to win, and I was particularly taken with the producers from Icarus, because here was a documentary that they went in to film something entirely different, and they stumbled across something else that suddenly became their movie, and they seemed to be extremely overwhelmed that they were the winner and not Faces Places, which would certainly have been a worthy winner as well. But those kind of moments when people who don't expect it are kind of you get the sense of how important this award is to certain people, and I also saw it on the face of the trans actress Daniela Vega when A Fantastic Woman won. She just seemed shocked, not overwhelmed, but grateful, and you don't often see that gratitude in speeches, and so these smaller ones were some of the ones that resonated with me. And then I also liked Allison Janney. I did this all by myself.
Yeah. I think when we're looking at the show as a total, the speeches, there were some good speeches, as you say, Tom. I also thought the presenters that they got tonight were paired up with a lot more care and thought than a lot of other award shows we tend to see. And there are a few missteps. I don't think Ansel Elgort should have been presenting for Baby Driver categories, but I think they did all right. Here we're joined by Gold Derby Chief and Captain Tom O'Neill. Tom, lay it on us. I know you have some strong feelings and thoughts from tonight.
Yes, well, it's curious. If you had bet Gold Derby's racetrack odds all the way down in all 24 categories, you would have had a score of 19 correct. We had 5 categories wrong. Of course, we had Best Picture wrong, but only in the last week. We had Shape of Water out front all the rest of the year. I think our little echo chamber just kind of took over and buried us. what are the five here? Oh, we had Faces Places over Icarus. That makes a lot of sense in retrospect that the big Icarus won. We had Planet of the Apes over Blade Runner for visual effects. I knew that wasn't going to happen. I think most of us did, but the odds, the general public at the site tilted the odds the other direction. Heaven is a Traffic Jam was a upset, and DeKalb was expected to go over Silent Child, who pulled off an upset. Otherwise, the predicted favorites came through. No big shocks.
Now, before the show, Tom, you were saying how you were a bit worried. Maybe you were too close to 3 billboards, and that can be a big danger of Oscar predictions in this business we're in. Where do you think you went wrong there? Unpack that for us.
Right. The mistake that I made, and I think the lesson we all learned this time, is the preferential ballot really does not make exceptions to the divisive rule. 3 billboards was just love it or hate it, and it may even have had the most #1 votes. We'll never know. Boy, The Shape of Water was the movie, just like Moonlight last year, that everyone went, oh, but I love. They might be talking about Darkest Hour or Dunkirk or anything, but the conversation, the Oscar talk would always go to, if you're on a street corner in Hollywood and you run into someone, let's say an Academy member, they'll say, yes, but the movie I love is Shape of Water. And by the way, the poll that Gold Derby made, Chris Beecham interviewed 7 Academy members, and Shape of Water led that poll. So I'm happy for us that we got it right. But I think 3 billboards forever cements the idea that you cannot have a divisive film win Best Picture.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. What do you think of the show, Tom?
Oh, I thought it was mediocre. I thought the writing was so especially bad. All those purple, badly written, pontificating little speeches about inclusion and equality were really awful. But some of the elements were good. It was terrific to see them bring the veterans back, like Christopher Walken and Eva Marie Saint and Rita Moreno.
Oh.
Those are magical moments when they do that. It's so great. And the performances were fine. I don't know. There were just no wonderful gotcha moments, except maybe Frances McDormand having all the women stand up. That took a big chance to do, and it really paid off nicely. And Jimmy Kimmel's stunt about going to the theater across the street, I never thought that was going to work, but he made it work.
He's good with people engaging with regular people, Jimmy Kimmel. He always seems to do that quite well on his show and stuff. So Tom, what do you think is the biggest lesson we take away from the Oscars this year?
I think they became a little more predictable as of tonight. I think that Shape of Water was the predictable Oscar winner. It reverts to form. Best Picture and Best Director now line up again. The movie with the most nominations now wins again. All of that kind of stuff. And that whole bullshit about, the SAG Ensemble nomination, you absolutely have to have that to win Best Picture. Boy, the posters in our forums, all the Oscar nerds in general, just kind of cling to that rule as if it's such a sacred thing. And it explains why La La Land lost last year, because it didn't have the SAG Ensemble nomination. Well, hooey to all of that, because Shape of Water had no SAG Ensemble nomination. It didn't matter.
I do think you got to be careful, because at Gold Derby we're so good at following statistics and precedents and all that sort of stuff. You can find a sort of string of statistics to feed into any sort of theory, really. And probably the better thing is to be on the pulse of where Hollywood's sensibilities are that particular year. Like, no one's ticking out their Oscar ballot going, you know what? There was no Screen Actors Guild Ensemble nomination for Shape of Water. It's out of the race. We're not going to vote for this one.
It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Tony, what was your big we've talked about your favorite speech, but did you have a favorite moment of the evening?
I expected the trip to the theater to just be another. I wasn't as fond of the tour bus coming in last year. I thought that was kind of lame, and weird. And I thought that this, as soon as I saw that he was going to do this, I was like, oh God, here we go. But what I loved about it was that it was so, it was real. It was like, you could feel like the enthusiasm in that audience. Although if those people are really moviegoers, how come they're at the movies and not watching the Oscars? Shame on you. But I totally expected that to backfire, and to see Kimmel and Gal Gadot seem to really be having fun with it. I thought that bit was inspired, but the thing that made me laugh the most, I think, was when Jane Fonda came out and called the set the Orgasmatron from Barbarella. That just, I spit my water across the room. I was like, did she just make a Barbarella joke? That's fantastic. So those two really stood up for me.
Riley, do you have a highlight?
I'll answer a previous question about you're saying what have we learned. I think that the Academy was a lot more conservative this year than I actually expected, with The Shape of Water winning, but also in categories like visual effects and editing. Visual effects, it just went to the film that was the most like a Best Picture nominee again, even though, in the past couple of years we've seen Ex Machina, The Jungle Book with no other nominations winning. So it kind of went back to that old formula. And also in the editing category, we've seen a lot of films with, whatever had the most cuts. Whereas this year it kind of went for the more classic Academy choice, Dunkirk. So, we've been talking a lot in the last few years about how, there's all these new members in the Academy and they're voting differently. But I thought this was kind of a throwback in terms of the winners.
Yep. Toro, Brian, do you have any lessons you've learned or highlights of the evening?
I mean, I just like the respect that the Academy showed to some of its past winners. I think pairing Helen Mirren and Jane Fonda together was genius. And Jodie Foster actually was a hoot, even on her crushes with Jennifer Lawrence. And, of course, Eva Marie Saint. Oh, that just lifted my spirits just to see her there and to do so well. It felt like, surprisingly to me, an old-fashioned Oscar show with the results not that far away from what an old-fashioned Oscar show might have had.
Do we have any Oscar outrages? Anything that we're pulling our hair out over tonight? Tom O'Neill, do you have any?
Oh my God!
I want to hear this.
Oh, good.
I don't know. I haven't. I can't think of one right now. But you know what? I'll come back to that in a minute. I promise to have one for you soon. But here's these moments in award shows where they go off the rails and you think, oh my God, they're never going to rescue this moment, and suddenly they do. We had one of those classic situations for Best Actor. Gary Oldman was just off the rails. God knows what he was talking about. He's fucking it all up. It's all over the place. And then he comes to the finale and nails it. Ma put the kettle on. I'm bringing Oscar home. Wow, what a finale that was. Those are just great moments in awards history.
An outrage I had was tonight was a big night where the spotlight was on women. And a lot of the presenters, so Best Actor was presented by 2 women, Best Actress was presented by 2 women. They got some really legendary actresses of the past to come out and present awards. Obviously, Frances McDormand's moment highlighting the great women that were nominated, first ever cinematographer nominated, and Lady Bird, a film directed and written by a woman with a female lead, female support, the big sort of film that would encapsulate this sort of this real female empowerment in cinema and female voice in cinema goes home empty-handed. Does not win a single Oscar. Is one of the only 2 Best Picture nominees not to win an award tonight. And I was pretty upset that they couldn't find a place to give Lady Bird an award. Although it was only nominated 4 categories, so we would need to bump out some pretty heavy hitters. But that was something I was upset about tonight.
I'd say more outrageous along the same lines is that Kobe Bryant won when he's, an alleged rapist. So,
well, that's where I was.
And that film is not good.
No,
And
it's not.
That's the
The room really loved him too. There was no kind of like mixed feeling, maybe muted applause. They were all for it.
yeah. I mean, it's Los Angeles. I'm sure that a lot of Academy voters just automatically checked it off because it's Kobe. But it does present a conundrum for the Academy after all this, all that the ceremony represented, to be able to award an Oscar to someone like him.
He probably won't be coming back next year to present short film.
Oh, this is Hollywood. They'll probably bring him back.
Yeah.
The one thing that had me yelling at the TV, and I think I was yelling at it in the voice of Chris Beecham, was when they had the 2 stars of Baby Driver presenting the Sound Awards, in which Baby Driver could have won, and I was like, that is such a lame thing to do. Are they taking a chance that Baby Driver would win so they can get that moment of, oh, yay, my film won? It just creates this really kind of deflating moment because you could totally see the looks on their face, like their face just drop through all the Botox and stuff. It's not enough to stop their face from dropping when they say Dunkirk winning. So just stop doing that. And what was wrong with Wes Studi? Did anybody else notice something quite seemingly off there? I couldn't tell if he was going off the teleprompter or what, but there was just like this uncomfortable silence when he was making, I don't know what sort of point that was.
Yeah, no, sure.
I suspect a lot of people in the audience didn't know who this guy was.
And now the star of Last of the Mohicans. What?
Okay.
Tom, have you thought of an outrage for us yet?
Oh, an outrage. I was going to go with Kobe, and then Riley stole my thunder.
Add to it.
He really is, outrageous that. Well, it's outrageous that nobody. Well, let's see what the blogosphere reaction is. If it goes unremarked, then that's the outrage of the night. I just thought the whole show was so dull. I love the set. I love this. I think I put in the live blog. It looked like a giant disco ball had been crashed on the stage in millions of pieces. I loved that. I think they're great when they go over the top with this kind of camp theatricality. I like that. But I think that just the writing was so bad, and every one of the presenters came up there and gave this kind of gushing, preachy thing about equality and inclusion. Oh, shut up! Just or let them phrase it in some compelling, interesting way. But and I was embarrassed for
Annabelle Sciorra and Salma Hayek and Ashley Judd.
Yes. Just horrible.
It just seemed like a wasted moment to me. I was like, that's what you give them to do?
But Kimmel was fine. He really carries it off. He has real confidence and swagger up there on stage. I think it was kind of insulting to have a white male up there on this night of inclusion. I think they could have done a better job casting. But in terms of his hosting duties, I think everyone will agree he did a workmanlike yeoman's job.
Yeah.
I nominate Tiffany Haddish.
And she was great.
Because I just adore her.
Yeah. Do you think, Tom, he could be the next Johnny Carson, Bob Hope, Billy Crystal, who just gets a big string of these hosting gigs in a row? Makes sense for ABC.
It makes sense of ABC, exactly. Whether or not he actually is worthy of it, deserves it, no. But be curious to see if the network keeps hyping it.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if they do want to have a woman host or a minority host, though, at some point in the near future. Like, it could be a bit boring having a white male host it 10 years in a row or something like that. Oh, boy. I don't know how long we've been doing this, but should we Charles and who else? Are you bowing out, Tom?
Yeah. I'll bow out and let others in. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Charles and Amanda, ask you to join us now, and we can get your thoughts on the big Shape of Water night. But the love was spread across a lot of the Best Picture nominees. Like Lady Bird and The Post aside, all the other films were able to pick up a win, and Three Billboards won 2 awards. Dunkirk won 3. So, what films do we think had a good night outside of Shape of Water, Tom?
Dunkirk had a pretty good night.
Yeah.
They really did sweep, and I mean, I'm just staying in the tech area. Blade Runner 2049 had a pretty good night.
Yeah.
So
very much so.
There was Shape of Water in terms of numbers of wins.
Yeah. Yeah, no film racked up a huge total this year. I think 4 was the most for Shape of Water. Riley, do you have what films do you reckon had a good night tonight, or maybe a film that underperformed tonight?
I guess I'll draw some attention to Icarus, because that was one of the few upsets, and I was also happy to call, which is why I'm bringing attention to it. But I think that was one example of where Gold Derby was kind of, and the internet in general, I feel like, was kind of in this echo chamber where, like, it wasn't a film that was important, it wasn't as, like, widely seen, and I guess that's something to know for the future.
Yeah. And Tony?
It's hard to say if any film had a really good night. I really wished that when James Ivory won his Oscar, I felt like they mentioned in the announcements as he's walking to the stage that, he's now the oldest Oscar winner ever, and it's James Ivory. You point that out, that here's the guy behind A Room with a View and Howard's End and The Remains of the Day, 3 of the greatest films of all time. And I loved his speech because he called attention to his writer Ruth Power Jabvala, who wrote those films, and his late partner Ismail Merchant, who produced those films. I wanted there to be even more celebration for James Ivory.
Is there, before you three leave us, I'll give you one more chance if there's one category you want to touch on that you haven't had a chance to touch on yet. Tom?
Let's talk about song.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan of the presentation, and it seemed like something out of a Mexican restaurant. And so that if presentation was the key, probably the song from Marshall was the best song, or Mary J. Blige from Mudbound. But This Is Me, I was afraid was going to win. The rhymes are so bad in that song that they don't even live in the same song. Jeez. So I'm glad that didn't win. And that Remember Me, which is used to really help the story, did, but I was just afraid it was going to be forgotten because it hasn't had the recent hype on talk shows that This Is Me has had. So I'm kind of glad that won.
Yeah, down in Australia, they're playing This Is Me on the radio. Like, it's getting a lot of radio play at the moment.
I never want to hear that song again. It's been playing so much. I'm like, I get it. That's you. Let's move on, because right now I just want to hear anyone else sing. But I'm like, seriously. Sorry.
This is why I don't listen to radio.
Yeah.
But didn't it seem weird also, Tom, that you brought up the song presentations? Like, all the other, like, 4 out of the 5 songs got this really grand thing, and Mystery of Love from Call Me By Your Name only got the first verse in there and then cut off abruptly.
I think it's like too long of a song. Like, I think it was.
You could at least have had one more verse in there. There's 3 verses in there. You could have at least had one more, just so we could look at Sufjan Stevenson's amazing outfit. I mean, that is some Johnny Weir level shit that he was wearing there, and it was fantastic.
Do you like
I love being on the late night with Charles.
Like how they got him popping up out of the floor, and then like they just
just lives there.
The floor on him at the end. Yeah, they like
he just lives there.
Like, okay, with that, one verse is enough. You can start winding him back down.
I was expecting him to go, "Wait, I'm not done."
Yeah. That's what they'll do next year for long acceptance speeches. They'll just start lowering you into the floor while you're asleep. Yeah. Oh boy. Riley, was there a category you wanted to talk about we didn't get a chance to yet?
Oh, I think I'm good.
Oh, great.
I'm just forward to next year when makeup and hairstyling has 5 nominees.
Yeah,
Really?
that'll be good. And Tony.
Hopefully, yeah.
Tony, is there a category?
Not particularly, but I do want to say that there's one trend that I want to see go away, and that is people putting their Oscar down on the ground. Because the only 2 people who I will allow that to happen are James Ivory, because he's freaking 90,
and he's got a cane.
And he's got a cane, so he's allowed. Frances McDormand, because she's everything. But Sam Rockwell, you could have held the Oscar. You could have not put it on the ground.
Yeah, but 2 of the 3 people who did it, Tony has the winning moments of the evening. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tony, Riley, and Tom, for talking with us Oscars. We're going to round out our show with Amanda. And, oh, look at Riley go for that. I guess it's champagne.
Boy.
Very good.
Been running that blog all night. I don't know about you, man. I'm ready to have a drink.
Yeah. I've had a little bit more.
What, you're not drinking while you do the blog? I thought that was the whole point of it.
Yeah. So,
unless you're in recovery.
We're going to round out this after party with Amanda and Charles and Rob Licuria if he wants to join. He's got the link. He's more than welcome. And yeah, thanks Riley, Tom, and Tony, and the other Tom who left us a few minutes ago.
See you for the Emmys.
Yeah, for the Emmys. Emmys coming soon. Okay, here we go, guys. I'll set the timer for 20 minutes.
I don't abide by your patriarchal timer.
Yeah, well, we're following. We wrap up in 20 minutes.
You can't interrupt me. It's the year of the women. Come on.
It's got the egg time.
It's also the year of Kobe, so
this is why
take that for what it is.
That's why I get to say as much as I want.
This is why I've set the egg timer. I won't be cutting anyone off. The arbitrary time that I've chosen will be cutting whoever is speaking at that point off.
Oh, you are going to make a great dad someday.
Yeah.
You have 2 minutes to tell me what's wrong.
Yeah.
So I just want to kick this off my part by saying, okay, so I actually thought the ceremony was great. I thought it was great. I thought Kimmel did another great job. I thought the ceremony, it was a bit beat over the head with the whole, recognizing equality thing. It felt like every presenter was making that, and it just sort of lost it. But it was still a solid ceremony. But my favorite little bitty moment, and even this is including Roger Deakins finally winning, was at the end when Guillermo del Toro gets up on stage for Best Picture and Warren hands him the envelope. The look on his face, that elated look of Guillermo del Toro, that he's just this big Mexican teddy bear that I just adore, and I just I want that. I want that face on a shirt. That's what I want.
Yeah, that's good.
And can I just say, like, I get what they were doing and having, the 2 sets of women present Best Actor and Actress and whatever, but I really, really wanted to see Alfonso Cuarón and Alejandro Iñárritu get up there and present Guillermo del Toro Best Director. And I just wonder if Cuarón is just seething with jealousy just a little bit because now he's the only amigo who hasn't directed a Best Picture winner.
Well, he also only has 1, to Guillermo's 2, and Alejandro's 4 competitive and 1 honorary.
Yeah, I know, but I was kind of looking forward to that cute moment. But Tiffany, Haddish, and Meryl Streep, that is my new movie goal. Please, Meryl, do the movie with her. I beg of you. I will buy tickets in advance. I want to see that movie. And she is so savvy to wear that dress again. And don't feel bad that you didn't get that Oscar nomination. You're going to win an Emmy for your SNL guest host.
There we go. It's out there. What do you think, Amanda? What did you make of the Shape of Water win at the end of the night? Were you shocked? Is that what you were predicting?
I wasn't predicting it, and I'm not shocked, but you can't really be upset. I'm upset with people who've made the same mistake a couple years in a row with the ensemble stat not wanting to go down that road again. Like, you can't really fault myself or Zach, who went with Get Out, for saying, you know what, I think I'm going to go with one of the 5 in that lineup. And so now we know about every 23, 24 years, you don't need it. We knew eventually it was going to happen. It's just really hard. It was really hard to see it because it didn't win the Golden Globe. It didn't win BAFTA. We didn't see it coming. So it's, again, I mean, we can find if you want to like find a stat to support anything you believe, trust me, you can do it. But I still think that's going to hold. We just saw that the editing stat holds. Get Out and Lady Bird didn't win. The directing stat still holds 99% of the time. And I really wanted Lady Bird to win. But right before that envelope was open, I'm like, I don't want it to be in that Grand Hotel situation where the only victory it gets is Best Picture. Like, I just didn't want that to be its story. So I'm fine with Shape of Water. I thought, like, you know, the old fuddy-duddies would think it was too weird, but I guess that didn't matter to them. Yeah,
it overcame the fish sex hurdle, the jokes about fish sex plaguing its narrative this awards season.
Just sex in general. I mean, there's not a lot of Best Picture winners with a lot of sex in them. I wouldn't count Moonlight because that, you know, we don't need to get into the Clinton rules, but, you know, Chicago.
Now, hold on here. Let's have a long, drawn-out conversation on this.
Tom's going to come back and go, you guys need to change the subject.
Charles, what would you like to change the subject to?
Yeah, well, I will say I was happy for Shape of Water to win. I thought, you know, it was weird. Any of the 5 films that we saw having a legitimate shot at Best Picture would have broken some rule that we would have thought of. That we would normally say, you know, in an unusual year, that's a disqualifying thing. And it's not as if, you know, to correct the sentiment of what Tom said, you know, it's not about, you know, people looking at a ballot saying, oh, this doesn't have a SAG Ensemble nomination, so I'm not going to vote for it. It's a sign. It's what we're trying to look at. And that has been one of the most reliable ones. And of course, in retrospect, last year we were saying that should have been a sign that maybe it wasn't as big that La La Land wasn't as big a lock to win Best Picture as we thought. But, you know, what's interesting about this year is, you know, I did not think that the Academy was going to spread the wealth as much as they did. I really thought that, you know, I really thought that Three Billboards was going to win picture and original screenplay. Those ended up going to 2 different movies. And you look at these choices and just like looking at Shape of Water on paper, even when you take out the whole, you know, amphibian thing, you know, the whole idea of this monster, you know, sort of fairy tale, the idea that would be a Best Picture winner is so far out. The idea that, you know, Get Out would be a legitimate contender in Best Picture and win original screenplay. That is, we are in an amazing era over the past several years of very unorthodox films picking up major Oscars. I mean, think of a movie also like a couple years ago, we had Her win original screenplay. I mean, that seemed like such an out-of-the-box thing for the Oscars to do.
Well, I
think now it's becoming more of the norm. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think what we've seen recently with original screenplay is almost an underline under original. Like, what is the most original idea? Because Her, that's original. Get Out, that's something we haven't seen before. I mean, I could see how somebody could argue The Shape of Water is like Beauty and the Beast almost. Not really, but, you know, woman falls in love with creature.
The aspects are there.
Yeah, the aspect of it. So I think what we've seen, at least with original screenplay, is if you're nominated for Best Picture, what is the most original screenplay?
Yeah, and I would say that Shape of Water is very much an adult version of Beauty and the Beast. Which
but it's still not like original with...
No. I agree. Chris Beecham has joined us. Chris, what's your big takeaway from tonight, or the thing at the forefront of your mind right now?
You didn't have to rerun the winners.
Yeah.
You just don't even know how hard that was last year. They said La La Land, I click the button. When you've got an award show, I do all the prediction center stuff. So when it's like an indie spirit and we've got, say, 1,200 people predicting and it's just 9 categories, that might take 5 minutes to run. It doesn't matter if I hit the button as soon as the show's over or half an hour later. It's not, but 24 categories with 7,000 people takes a while to generate. So last year, they said I don't even think I hit it immediately. I think 2 people had made speeches and then I hit it. So I had to find out from India last year, how do you stop a train from running? Because what I didn't want was somebody screen capturing the fact that they had won when they hadn't. So they somehow in India figured out
that had already happened that evening.
Well, I have had situations where we've had to stop something, not stop something, but something finished. I made a mistake, let's say, and it was just a small little award ceremony. I have a button where I can do recalculate scores, but it takes like twice as long as it has to undo everything and then do the new version. So I was imagining, 5 hours later at 5 a.m, still doing Oscar prediction score reports last year. So anyway, tonight I waited like 5 minutes. I waited till the credits were over and then I ran 9. They actually ran really fast, so thanks to our guys in India, because every year the system improves so much. We had 5 people, 23 out of 24 categories. I thought we might have a perfect score because really the only ones that there were no like major surprises. The ones that any of us missed or anybody missed were like the second place choices, basically. So I thought somebody was going to throw a dart and really, just happened to get the 24. But we had 5 people with 23. Our best editors had 20 out of 24. That was Daniel, Paul, and Joyce tied. And then Adnan Virk from ESPN had 21 out of 24. So he's the top out of 30 experts. We had 30 experts this year from the various websites and media companies. So Adnan loves us, and I'll send him a tweet in a few minutes and he'll retweet that. But anyway, that's just kind of where we are. If anybody wants to see their scores, they're very easy to find up in the score section and in the Oscar section. So look for those.
Chris, this is what I'm always interested in.
7,000 people.
Yeah, what I'm always interested in, Chris, is who did better, the Gold Derby experts or the Gold Derby editors?
Oh, I don't know. There's a button, you mean like overall, like collectively?
Yeah, overall, like on average, yeah.
It has to be the editors because the worst editor had 75%, which was you, Matt.
What? Oh, no. Oh, no.
But that's 18. That's 18 out of 24. We had a bunch of experts lower than the 60s in the percentages. So,
I did. Well, I guess
you and somebody tied. Maybe Tom. No, Tom was a little better than that.
I'm with you on 75, so don't worry.
I thought I got like 18 right.
Matt and somebody tied at 75. Oh, Marcus. Matt and Marcus tied at 75.
I didn't know Paul had a brother, apparently. I'm sorry, I just saw him ahead of my name.
Just to be fair, I feel like the gap between first and last on the edit is not huge.
No, you had 18. Some of us had 19. I was in that group, and then the 3 that won had 20. So it was.
So I was 2 off the lead, is how I like to say it. Chris, what was predictions aside? What did you think the biggest takeaway was from tonight?
Looking at the presenter list on paper, like going into the weekend, I thought they were holding back some surprises because it looked kind of sparse to me. There weren't the exciting names I really wanted to see. And I actually prefer when producers give us a few presenters, but don't give us everything. Don't tell us everything. But every single name that presented tonight was on their list. I mean, they didn't like technically announce Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway in advance, but we knew. So the show was way better than I was expecting. I had lowered my expectations based on that list and based on I knew in advance like Emma Stone was not doing Best Actor, which I still don't understand.
I'm with you on that one, Chris.
That's true. Well, okay, let's say let's say you want certain people, why not give her Best Actor and Jane Fonda and Helen Mirren do director? I mean, those kind of decisions boggle my mind. I don't. Why would you go away with tradition unless Emma's people might have approached them and just said, she's got this really clever line about Greta Gerwig. She would love to present Best Director instead of us. I mean, that could have happened.
Yeah. My theory, Chris, is that because Casey Affleck was not presenting this year, in part due to the Me Too movement and him sort of withdrawing his name, that they didn't want to have her present the winner from last year's Best Actress present Best Actor, and not have some other thing present Best
Actor. But they've had that problem in the past. They've had that problem in the past when Kate Blanchett won for The Aviator. She didn't come back the next year.
I feel like it's different an actor not being able to come back and there being some level of controversy as to why they're like not wanting to draw attention to the reason. Like,
I wanted to see Denzel do it. I just think
that would have been cool.
Perfect.
If they got Denzel to do it, that would have been cool.
I was thrilled. I mean, I look at little things. I was really afraid. I really hate it when something like one of the 20 actors misses out on being there for whatever reason. And we had heard a couple of weeks ago, Leslie Manville's in a play in London. There was no way she was going to be able to get over all the way to Los Angeles and still hold her play schedule. So that was good. And then there were 3 or 4 others at the last. We had heard Woody Harrelson took off to do a movie somewhere the day after the SAG Awards. And we had heard way back when that he was going to have, they were like trying to clear his schedule to get to the Oscars. Notice he missed BAFTA, for example, missed the Oscar luncheon. And then I just started thinking about people like a Daniel Day-Lewis. Maybe he doesn't want to come over. If people really think they're not going to win and they have to go a long distance. Denzel Washington's in play rehearsals in New York. And he wasn't seen anywhere in the audience until that moment where we saw him. Remember?
Yeah, I didn't think he was there.
Yeah. So he must have slipped in with 30 minutes to go or something.
I feel with like Daniel Day-Lewis, like since they made so much hype about this being his last performance, now that I think about it, I think if they would have just held the movie till next year, knowing Gary Oldman was such a front runner and just made it like this big, see his last performance.
Well, that's easier said than done. If it was also Fox Searchlight, maybe. But Focus wanted to be a player, and that was their biggest push. They only had really that. When all was said, they kind of know as the season moves along and the year is moving along, all they really had was Victoria and Abdul and Phantom Thread. That was actually getting some, potentially going to get some traction. So they don't want to miss a cycle really of being a part of even if it means a loss. They don't. And then they did win costume design, so that was good. So
Didn't Focus also do Darkest Hour?
I thought they did.
You're right, Darkest Hour. So I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it's sort of like what you were saying with the competition between 3 Billboards and Shape of Water, since they were both Fox Searchlight.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't care.
They had to be neutral on their pushes there. You're right. Knowing that Focus had Gary Oldman, that would have made a lot of sense to maybe hold back Phantom Thread a little bit. But they got a Best Picture nomination, Best Director, Best Actor and Supporting Actress. They won costume design. They did not do a bad job of campaigning it nor getting it in. I don't know that it would have won next year. So getting a 4th Oscar is not going to be easy for whoever's going to try it. And there are only 2 people right now that could do it, are Meryl Streep and
unless Jack makes another movie like that.
Unless he makes another movie, that's right.
Yeah. And a good one.
He's back.
And a good one. He can't do another one of those like Death Wish movies.
That's the kind of people I think we're missing tonight. For a 90th, I was disappointed in. I love seeing Eva Marie Saint, Rita Moreno, certainly Jane Fonda anytime. But 2 out of those 3 we see pretty regularly at things. I think we were missing some of the legends, and I thought they would do that maybe with the 5 presenting. The 4 acting categories, or maybe doing an Oscar family album. I knew none of that was happening though, as of, I didn't know officially, but I kind of was getting the feeling late in the week that even though I'd written some articles and thrown out some scenarios, I got the feeling all of a sudden that there was just no way they were doing it because certain people, like today on Twitter, maybe it was yesterday, Reese Witherspoon had something about, good luck everybody at the Oscars, I'll be in my PJs. And I thought, well, if Reese Witherspoon, who loves
go to
these things,
anything.
is not planning on being there, she lives in LA, then they're not doing a family album. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, I think that anyone who's going to host on like a 90th or a 95th needs to go back to like the 80th and the 85th where they did those class photos, or they showed like one of their montages was of all the winners of Best Picture, just flashing the title cards basically up of those. That's something that I was missing also. I like seeing that part of history. Like, they can't lure some of these more influential people, even just having Cher present Mary J. Blige as present for Best Original Song to perform, because she's one of the singers who's won an Oscar and wasn't in a musical. So I think that would have been kind of nice. I'm not to say anything about Taraji P. Henson. I love her. She was great, but I would have liked to see that too. But I love that Rita Moreno wore the same dress she won her Oscar in. Good for you for still fitting into it. That is a feat.
Amazing? The 4 acting montages were really good, and the thing that I liked about them was they usually on these anniversary years, if they do something like that, it's only acceptance speeches. It's only moments of them at the Oscars, and here were scenes from their movies that won them the Oscars, and that hadn't really been done that way before.
Was Denzel missing from supporting actor? I might have blinked and.
He was in there.
That's disrespectful. Okay, he was in there? Okay.
He was, yes.
Okay, I must have like blinked or something and missed it, but I was like, if he's not in there, that's very disrespectful.
Yeah. Well, Chris, why do you think Shape of Water won? What do you think the biggest thing was that got that over the line?
Well, I had it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I got sort of guilted out of, not guilted by anybody, but just guilted by the system of switching to 3 billboards over the weekend. I think any of us can talk ourselves into and out of about anything, especially when it's in a close race. I mean, nobody was getting my attention other than the 4 actors that won. But just in a close race like that, I just convinced myself that Shape of Water was a little too unusual, and perhaps the biggest thing I thought it had going for it was the Producers Guild win, which was preferential. But in this cycle, especially this year with the Olympics, it was so long ago. I thought, well, things have kind of changed since they voted. When they voted, they thought it was maybe the front runner. So Tom is right, what Tom O'Neill said on your earlier part of this. I mean, my biggest worry in talking to Oscar voters the past couple of weeks, and then just talking to people at parties, was there was hatred for 3 billboards. And any movie that's got hatred or divisiveness, and I'm not even talking about hatred of the movie, but like last year, La La Land was divisive in that by the time people saw it, we were hearing, oh, was that all it was? It was like expectations weren't met divisiveness, not hatred, racism, divisiveness. So I think we've got to listen to those things. Even more than any particular stat, we've got to listen to that.
Yeah. No.
Especially with the preferential ballot, because you can purposely game it so that it actually affects it so it actually affects that film in a negative way.
Well, my other thought too, when I made the switch, was we all know how that works on the preferential. The first movie out of the running, whatever's in 9th place, then they look at their 2nd place votes first. That's the first group that gets looked at to move them into 1st place votes. And I was thinking probably The Post was in 9th, and another movie like The Post, just in terms of hot button issue kind of stuff, social message kind of issue, I thought would be a Post voter might have 3 billboards in 2nd, is what I was thinking. So,
well, I don't always agree with like that. I mean, I think, just because you love The Post doesn't mean like your next movie wouldn't be Dunkirk. And I don't think the people.
Oh, I know. And that was something I had never done these Oscar interview voter. And they, by the way, I'll do it again next year, but boy, I know a lot more going in. It's hard to get people to do that. And they certainly, they'll ask several times on the phone call, which you don't see in a transcript. are you sure this is going to be secretive? Nobody's going to know it's me. And
Well, it's
what do you
against
do with this
Academy.
recording? And so it was really, I probably reached out to 60 people to get 7.
Yeah, I think I read one time that it's against Academy rules to
Well, it is.
present to tell who, like, to say my name is so and so, and here are my here's who I'm voting for. Like, unlike the Emmys, where you can tweet out that you voted for so and so, you can't do it at the Oscars, which I applaud.
No, you're right, and it took a lot of, but I had been seeing it for years on other places, so I thought it was, hey, this is probably pretty easy to put together. But the one thing that I gathered in talking to them is, once I got them on the phone and was getting the recording done, just how all over the map and unpredictable a person would be. A person that you thought, hey, this is an older person, this is a guy. And I'm not saying on any of these, I don't want you to match up anything, but they loved female-driven movies, or something. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. I mean, I love it, but this is interesting. Or a younger voter that I thought would be probably like all over Lady Bird or Call Me by Your Name. Didn't even mention them the whole call and went strictly with the older stuff.
Like the post is my film. So I got
And then when I would get on the picture, I would ask. I didn't want their whole 9, but I would say, tell me after they gave me their quotes about 1. I said, well, just tell me what you got in second and what you got in third. Never could. There was no rhyme or reason at all, and it didn't necessarily. That was the last question I would ask them on the picture. So I already knew what they had in the other 7, and it wouldn't necessarily match up with anything they just talked about.
Yeah.
The first voter I did, I think you'll remember, it was an Actors Branch member. Never mentioned Dunkirk the whole phone call until I got to Best Picture, and this person says, Dunkirk's my number 1 for Best Picture. Okay. That's why. So it was. I just say, but I told Tom, and anybody could read those. 3 Billboards was rarely mentioned in terms of picture. And certainly Francis and Sam, even Woody Harrelson got a couple of votes. It got mentioned in screenplay, but it never it was not number 1 on any of the 7 ballots, and I think it was only 2 or 3, maybe twice. So out of 21 possible choices, it was only on 2. And so I should have. But again, I'm convincing myself of, well, it's just 7 people.
Well, you're also assuming that they're telling you the truth too. I mean, not.
They really were. I get a sense of those things, and we would talk for 2 or 3 minutes before I would start recording, and I really got. If you read what they're saying, I couldn't put in everything they said, but they really were, and early on, before voting started, I interviewed a couple of them, and you'll notice on that first one, the actor one, he still didn't know what he was going to do on director, I believe it was, and he gave his reasons why both, and I just put it that way on the ballot. I just said he's struggling with which of these 2.
Yeah,
I think they all give it consideration. Paul wanted me to ask them, just like not off the record, but not for the article, but just tell me about like the shorts. Do you like to vote in the shorts? Do you abstain? Do you watch and the first 2 that I asked that, I never asked the other 5. The first 2 lit into me in such a way of course I watch the shorts. I watch everything. That's my job. I do my job. I watch them all. There's no reason for a person not to watch. I mean, so after 2 of those, I just said, I'm going to assume the other 5 watched the shorts. So anyway, they really, I got the feeling from everybody I interviewed that they take this very seriously. I don't get that feeling with Emmy voters. Yeah, and Emmy voters, I tried to do this with them last September. And you know what I heard over and over from people? People that we either know, or we know their reps, or we have a connection to their studios. I won't give any names, but people that would not have been in the mix this year, but certainly we've known over the years and really know us. I never heard they don't want to do it, or they don't want to do it because of the secrecy thing. What I heard probably 99% of the time, I reached out to about 40 people there, was they don't watch enough television to feel like they would be smart in their discussion. I said, but do they vote? Oh, yeah, they vote. So that's what we've got at the Emmys.
That explains a lot, actually.
I heard that every time but one, I think, out of 40.
So, Chris, I know you're not just a student of Oscar history, but you're also someone who admires the awards aspect, the presentation aspect. What did you think of this year's ceremony?
Well, I thought last year's ceremony, same producers, same host, was incredible. I mean, up until the last 10 minutes, which the producers have no control, over what happened there. I only had little quibbles last year. The screenplay thing where Amy Adams presents the one with Arrival and Matt and Ben present the one with, just flip it. Come on, be smarter than that.
They should have you produce it. You could be like a special consultant.
I would love that. You just don't know how much I would love that.
He would be drunk.
I thought last year's ceremony was a good, solid A. I would put this one maybe a B plus. I thought it was very well produced. Didn't have many quibbles. I think in our live blogging, I said something about play the Bonnie and Clyde music when Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway walk out. Last year they didn't do it, and this year they didn't do it. It's not like it's got to be in the public domain. I mean, come on.
It's the Banjo music.
It's not like it's just some music from some movie. It's so identifiable. I mean, that gets people riled up in terms of when you do that. Little things like that. I thought the Memoriam was great tonight. I don't know much about that song, but it seemed to fit, and I love the images they chose. I'm trying to think of other. I'm not a big fan on any show of presenters that don't know each other together. I just don't understand why. I know at the Emmys, I've talked to Glenn and Glenn Weiss and I'm forgetting the other name. I'm sorry. Hopefully they don't see this. They told me last year, because it's their first time producing the Emmys, there's so many qualifications on who they choose to present because they've got to represent the 4 broadcast networks equally. Maybe the home network for that year gets a couple of more people. But then they've got to, HBO needs a couple and FX needs a couple. And they really have a hard time just saying, okay, here's 2 people from this show. Because they've taken up 2 slots on one category from that network.
That makes it even more special having somebody from like Roots. Now that I think about Cicely Tyson, knowing that.
Well, a historic situation, that's a little bit different. That doesn't really count against them on their, on their numbers.
I'm just like thinking.
But if you see, trying to think, I can't even remember who presented the Emmys, but if you see a couple of people together, and which is almost every category, and they're not from even the same network, that's why. Oscars really don't have that problem because at the point that the Oscars were held, all the movies have been released and out. Studios aren't going to say, well, you gave Fox Searchlight this many, and you gave, because actors move on to other projects, so it's not like they just work for that one studio. But I much prefer, and I think the banter is much better when people know each other for the most part. So I hate it when they pair up people that don't know each other at all. And I hate, like you talked about earlier, the 2 from Baby Driver presenting the 2 sound categories. It's a no-win situation because if the person wins that they want to win, the people in the Twitter universe go, oh, well, they knew that was going to happen. And then they get real excited on stage. And if they lose, you see the faces like we saw tonight. You see Amy Adams' face last year. I mean, they think that they're about to open. Amy Adams probably thought she was opening an Arrival envelope. Because they're thinking, oh, well, they wouldn't have me presenting this if it wasn't Arrival. So that's where I don't think it's good from a production standpoint. You lose either way. And people either think it's fixed, or they think, or the person on stage has to do a forced smile.
And I don't think anyone is like tuning into the Oscars going, oh, I cannot wait to see Ansel Elgort give the Baby Driver sound mixer an award tonight.
I bet
I
you
think
could
there's the
name that
upside.
person before the nominees were.
Well, I didn't have the order in front of me, and when they said the Star Wars people were coming out next, I just thought, please don't let them present visual effects.
I was worried about the exact same thing.
Because I wasn't looking at the order, but I was so glad they weren't. But it makes no sense to me.
That was just one that I kept thinking about. I'm like, why couldn't Mark Hamill come last year? But I'm just one of those people that when I see the same producers producing these things, I'm like, with Carrie Fisher passing away last year, where was he or Harrison Ford to introduce?
By the way, Bill Paxton got shortchanged in this whole thing.
Yeah,
I looked at our memorial list. He died on the Saturday of Oscar weekend last year. So they'd already put the package together. There was no way to fit him in. So who did the presentation? I can't remember. It was Jennifer Aniston, because I remember her. She mentions leading into the thing. She's done some generic talk, and then she says, and we lost, Bill Paxton yesterday, and she tears up. And there's no way he could have been in the package, but at least they mentioned him. So he should have been in the package tonight. I mean, he deserved to have his face on screen for one or the other.
I think the most iconic in Memoriam was still Whoopi for Gene Siskel. I will never forget her just raising her thumb to him. I was like, he got the best of anyone.
When those are done right, they are. I've looked at some of them over and over again when they're done right. They're just amazing. And this was a good one. It wasn't. I don't like it when the director cuts. Like the director gets antsy and cuts back to a wide shot. That's fine if that's a pause on the screen and you're putting the Memoriam logo back up. But the 3 or 4 people you just cut away from, I can't see those from my recliner over to my TV. That's not fair to them.
One thing I do miss though is when they started the In Memoriam reel this year with John Avildsen, the director. And I miss how when they would have the names up there, when they would actually show the credits. So you would be like, oh, okay, that's the guy who did this and this. And, like John Avildsen, he did Rocky.
I agree, just to give us an idea of what somebody.
And there was tons of black space above and below where they put their name. So that would have been really easy to do. You're right. The other, I always see missed opportunities. The other one was on the Stand Up for Something song. You've got all of these, I guess they're people that stood up for something.
Yes.
Why don't you put their name below their...
Why are they there?
What they did. Well, put that as a CG when you do the close-up of each person. I don't know who these people are.
That was
could be background singers.
That I think kind of gives the show a mark against it is that they had sound problems throughout those performances because Mary J. Blige was trying to give it her all. There were sound problems. There were sound problems with each one of them. And that Call Me and that Remember Me from Coco, I would be very upset because that had a lot of sound. It had a lot of problems technically. And I don't know what happened, but throughout all 5 of those, there was just a problem throughout each one with the sound.
Well, my egg timer went about 10 minutes ago, so we probably need to wrap up this show. But are there any final thoughts from each of you on a category we haven't touched on or a moment we haven't touched on that you'd like to comment on? Charles?
Roger Deakins.
Yes, we haven't talked about it.
Finally. Now, I made a pledge before this, Chris, you probably missed it, where I vowed if Deakins did not win, I would take out 3 billboards on Sunset Boulevard. Thank God I do not have to make that purchase.
Yeah, because that was a lot of money. That would have been a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. But hey, if Tommy Wiseau could do it, I'm just like, I am beyond thrilled that he finally. Although correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember who was presenting it, called his name. Did they do the wrong close-up of the wrong person? Because I think I remember it going, them initially cutting to the person from Shape of Water. I'm going to have to watch that clip again.
Yeah, I usually watch the ceremony again like tomorrow or the next day. I
think he's very lucky that the president didn't get the chance because of all of this Me Too and having to kick out Harvey Weinstein to push through his agenda of trying to get the names of the technicians and artists below the line. Because if they had put the names on that cinematography list this year, Rachel Morrison probably would have won in that, like, female support. It would have been a lot closer.
You could have argued
a lot more
that
of a nail biter.
You could have argued that would have helped Roger Deakins too, though, in highlighting, like, he's a name that people would have wanted to vote for as someone who's never won before. It would have really hurt the Shape of Water's chance in that category. I think it would have been game over for Shape of Water and cinematography if names were on the ballots. But yeah.
So. Okay, I'm actually watching it right now. They did the Zoom. They had the split screen of the 5 cinematographers up, and after she called Roger Deakins, they did the winning shot for Dan Louston from Shape of Water.
That's why what happens when you don't have Roger Deakins behind the camera calling the shots. He's not.
That was my problem throughout the ceremonies. Like, Allison Janney wins. Where's Bradley Whitford? Like, you can't get a cameraman just around him.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
I'm sure he's standing or crying or something.
Or Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah, Roger Deakins wins. Where's Joel Cohen? He's there.
Because Aaron Sorkin was right in the aisle. We saw him when Jimmy Kimmel was doing a bit in the crowd.
I'm sure he was standing up for her. Like, where are those kind of, like, 6 degree of separation kind of shots where it's like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Because I loved how happy Octavia Spencer was for her. But I think someone like a West Wing fanatic would have loved to have seen Aaron Sorkin.
How special is that for Allison that she had Bradley and Aaron in the room with her when she wins her Oscar? Who would have both been in the room? Yeah, who were both in the room with her when she won her first 2 Emmys as well, or first 3 Emmys. They were there
4.
as well. So
I think he won
4.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because Aaron.
I know you're rapping, but I'll do a quick 30-second story. At the
Yeah.
BAFTA Tea Party, which is the day before the Golden Globes, I was lucky enough to be invited the last couple of years, so I went over there. And you've been with me to a couple of those TV ones, Matt.
Yeah.
So at some point, the room is just packed. It's here at the Four Seasons, which is next to me. And the big ballroom is just packed. It always is. It's like shoulder to shoulder. Well, at some point, somebody from BAFTA gets up to say a few words, and they have everybody in the room quiet down. And at that point, I thought, I need a breath of air. I mean, it's just so claustrophobic in there. I thought, I'm going to step out till he finishes talking, and then I'll make my rounds again. Well, I walk out in the lobby, not the lobby of the hotel, but the lobby outside of the ballroom. And Allison Janney, loves us. I think I've done more interviews with her than any other person ever. Well, she and her rep are walking toward me, and she gives me a big hug, and her rep's telling her that it's not a good time to walk in anyway because they're doing the speech, and it's going to be like 5 minutes. So she and I are talking, and somebody taps her on the shoulder, and it's Bradley Whitford. I'm standing right here, and they hug, and they get to talking, and now she's not talking to me, which is fine. I don't expect her to, Bradley Whitford standing there. From nowhere, this is like a 3-way crossing now. Aaron Sorkin comes walking in from outside, and I'm standing like right next to the 3 of them, and they're all like in a group hug, and can't believe they're all at the Oscars and award shows at the same time again. And there's a photographer, wandering around, an official photographer, and somebody next to me, I wish it had been me, goes, do you know what a historic moment is happening right there? And the photographer goes, oh, what is it? And he tells them, why don't you get a picture of the 3 of them together? I think it'll do well for you. And so they take a couple of photos. Anyway, it was a really neat thing for me to see, being almost as big a West Wing fan as Matt. But if I had to walk out to get some air, I would not have seen it.
Well, I remember we were at the HBO party last year, Chris, and we saw Allison there, and we were having a chat with her, and you said to her, you're like, boy, you could really be an Oscar contention for I, Tonya. We're hearing really good things.
Toronto had just happened. She was just back from Toronto at the Emmys.
Yeah. So you were like, good. And she looked at us and said, wouldn't that be something?
Oh.
And here we are all these months later. I am thrilled for her. And I'm a big Laurie Metcalf fan. This has been hard on me in a way.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard in terms of, Allison's done, I think I've done 10 interviews with her. including red carpet, maybe 12. Laurie just doesn't do that kind of stuff. So it wasn't hard personally, but any other year, I guess is what I'm saying, I would be pulling for Laurie Metcalf like crazy.
Well, I would have found it tough as a voter this year because I think both those performances were so strong. But I really enjoyed it as a watcher because I didn't have to choose. I could just be happy for whoever won it.
I think what ultimately hurt Laurie Metcalf is when you think of how few movies she's made, and when she said this, and I heard it in an interview, I'm like, oh, I can't pick her. Was the last movie she made before Lady Bird was Scream 2.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like she played
we've seen people win for debuts. We've seen people win for really bad careers. I think
Allison Janney, just being in all those independent films.
Well, and also Allison really, I mean, like I just said, she loves this process and the system and the parties and the receptions, and she's really been enjoying the whole season. Laurie's done the bare minimum of what she had to do, and that included hardly any interviews. She was the only supporting actress we didn't interview. I think I expected the season to go split, back and forth, like Shape of Water and 3 Billboards. But Allison winning everything, that does surprise me. I thought Laurie took all the non-televised critic awards, most of them, and then Allison took over after that.
Which it's especially interesting considering Lady Bird was the film that got a few more Best Picture nominations and ensemble. That it seemed like Lady Bird was the film of the two that had a little more support, that it all went Allison's way this season.
And that's even more surprising when you think about the fact that of the category where there's a Best Picture nominee, only 2 wins went to a non-Best Picture nominee when there was a Best Picture nominee amongst those groups, and that was Roger Deakins and Allison Janney, making their victories even more sweeter.
Sorry, the song. Call Me by Your Name didn't win Best Song.
That song
was sort of up for Best Picture. I mean, not Best Picture.
That song, I think the word you mean is beautiful. That song is beautiful.
It's beautiful, but it's so quiet. I think it's kind of hard it doesn't stand out amongst all those other anthem songs that you kind of had this year.
Well, it's getting late, guys. It might be time to put a bow on our Oscar after party here. But the discussion is going to continue. Articles are going to keep on getting posted. The forums are going to still be alive into, I would imagine, the early hours of the morning at goldderby.com, where, Chris, can you start making Emmy predictions now?
Yeah, we launched on Friday. And during the Oscars, when that commercial aired, I pulled out House of Cards out of all of its categories. So it's up to date as we know it to be, and we'll keep adding more contenders in there. But yeah, go ahead and start making predictions. And I'm going to be on CNN in like half an hour if anybody wants to see that.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Have a quick toilet break and then get on to CNN to watch Chris.
I need a break.
Yeah.
Are you doing a live interview, or are you?
I think it's live. It's on Skype. So
cool. Okay.
It could be live recorded like we do on our interviews, but I don't know is the answer to that.
Yeah, I have a little problem. But...
Well, all the best with that, Chris, and thanks everyone for watching our Oscar coverage today.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.